and welcome to Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022. As always, we're coming live from the Sirius Star System studios right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope all is well with everybody. So we just got back from Spirit Fest in Punta Gorda, and I gotta, like I said, it's always a great time. You know, I have such a great time with people. You get to meet a lot of nice people and a lot of new faces, and that's kind of what I enjoy about traveling a little bit, is you get to, you know, meet new people and just kind of do new things and get new experiences, you know, and that's what I really enjoy. The deep conversations is why I kind of like doing events, because you get to meet so many different people and get to learn about people and get to connect with people in so many different ways. So I really had a great time, and you know, it's I just can't wait to get a little bit more healthier so I can start traveling a little bit more around the state and in other states like we used to. But yeah, getting out of the house was nice. So anyways, guys, as always, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and DLive, and our replays are always listed on the social media. I'm keeping today's intro short because tonight I'm really excited. We have such a fabulous guest with us. I met him, Dr. Paul Meckes, at actually a Spirit Fest here in West Palm Beach not too long ago, and we just really connected, and it was so nice to, you know, connect with someone with a like mind. And he just became, you know, I was a guest on his show for a little while, and it was just such a nice experience that I wanted to share his energy on this show as well. So, you know, a little bit about Dr. Paul Meckes is he's the host of ConsciousRadioNetwork and an ordained metaphysician. He is A.S.A. certified spiritualist, medium, and a healer. He is an experienced paranormal investigator and holds a Ph.D. in metaphysical science. Dr. Paul has spent much of his time over the last 20 years on a mission in scientific research of the advancement of knowledge and consciousness. So please help me welcome to the show, Dr. Paul Meckes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being on your show as well and collaborating. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm honored to have you. And you know, since the time we met at Spirit Fest, I felt such a great connection to you, and I wanted to make sure people got to know you because I think you have a lot to offer. So before we get into all the good stuff about, you know, can you tell people a little bit about who you are?
I've first started interested in the paranormal ever since childhood, and thinking that it was normal, and other people around me, friends and stuff, they're always asking me, you know, you believe in ghosts? And then they started coming to me. You people even that I didn't know. And then growing up around the unknown, the paranormal, I don't think the word metaphysics was even a word then, or at least I never heard of it. And this was like back in the 80s.
Yeah,
and,
no, it wasn't.
Yeah. And then I've always grown up watching like X-Files and ghost movies, and, you know, not horror, but, you know, ghost movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always thought this was second nature. Like, oh, well, this has got to be real. There's got to be some reality to this. And it wasn't until I professionally got more involved in it after my divorce back in 2012, and I was trying to seek self-discovery. I'm like, well, this is an area that I already know. I think I need to get more involved in a soul purpose more. And I wanted to seek kind of like shamanism.
Okay.
And then I found a local college, so to speak, to get a master's degree or a doctorate degree. Pretty extensive program, and as soon as I got into that, it just skyrocketed. I kind of just went that direction where the universe decided to where I was supposed to go.
It's kind of amazing how we shift in that. Like our curiosity starts when we're young, and I was into all that stuff too. I grew up though seeing spirits when I was young, and that kind of piqued my curiosity. But at first, were you afraid of this at first, like getting into something? Because in our society, Western culture, it's kind of, well, it used to be taboo to kind of talk about these things and investigate these things. And so, were you kind of nervous to get into this field, or how did you approach it?
That's a good question. Thanks for asking that. There is a stigma out there when it comes from the Hollywood side. You know, all these, I don't know if they call them reality programs, but it seems like they want to take that persona. But Hollywood is to blame to create that stigma of scary, horrific, bad. But as I got into it, I got into it slowly, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit later. But as you get into mediumship, and you start to, learn the decorum and start to learn, mediumship, you start to realize that it's not bad at all. I mean, you still have to take precautions, but most of it, as long as you have the, good intention and stuff like that, and the energy, then not at all.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm glad you said that, because when I was growing up and I first started seeing beings and people at such a young age, and I knew that they weren't there, it was because of movies like Freddy Krueger and Night of the Living Dead and everything that scared me, because I'd be walking down the hall and I'd see someone standing there and I'd freeze, and my mind would start saying, oh, this thing's going to attack me and do something harm to me. And so it triggers us, and I'm sure you run into this all the time, these stigmas of people always thinking that there's just so much evil out there coming to attack us. And it's and as we evolve and start to understand, and we're into this field, we start to realize that it's not what it is at all.
Yeah. I grew up watching the Nightmare on Elm Street and the Jasons and then Friday the 13th, and it appears that we all are programmed to believe that the spirit world is bad. And we need to veer away from it. And I'm actually doing a couple discussions, public venues, lectures, talking about metaphysics and getting into working, and trying to incorporate, our third dimensional realm, and how we can work more in the fourth, fifth, sixth, and other dimensions, basically the spirit realm, and learn about that and help, kind of almost like a spiritual co-op.
Yeah, when I was real young, I started being visited by one of my main guides, Lori, and she used to sit at the edge of my bed all the time. And when I first told my father that, he kind of freaked out. I was like, Dad, who's the lady in white that sits at the edge of my bed? And she just sits there smiling. and my dad was like, what lady? Right where you're sitting. And you could just see he just got so uncomfortable. And the house that we grew up in was an old Civil War nursing home, and it had a lot of activity because a lot of people passed. And so there was a guy with a red robe that would show up, and a guy with an old 40s top hat, or it looked like it. I couldn't tell. But and it just, like, these experiences we have, I think, are meant to teach us something and to show us that, there's more than just this physicalness that we see in the third dimension. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Spirit tries to reach us out to us all the time, continuously, but we don't know how to pay. I wouldn't say paying attention, but I think for the majority of the people that take it as are scared, like a lot of the investigations I've had. I'll just take one for instance, even though most of it is basically the same, is Spirit usually reaches out to us for some sort of an assistance, or they're trying to get our attention in some form or another. They're trying to, hey, can you go check on this? Oh, you forgot to turn the gas off on your stove, or there's a hidden envelope in the wall that's been there since the 1800s, and I'm trying to let everybody know it's there. or there's something buried in the backyard, or a loved one, an ancestor that has passed, not necessarily recently, but anytime. They're trying to get your attention. And I wouldn't say they're trying to play tricks, but they're trying to find ways within the third dimension. They're lowering their vibration to get through this veil of our third dimension and try to get our attention to either turn on a radio, turn on the TV, mess with your cell phone, mess with your computer, move things, just small things, and usually just trying to, bits at a time, until we kind of go, oh, there's a synchronicity here.
Well, I think that's important because, as people, a lot of times, and I see this all the time, people want these big signs and these big, things to happen in their life. And I don't think they realize the energy it takes to lower the vibration to get to this side, because the third dimension is the most dense dimensions out of all of them. And to understand that, to come over and to drop these little hints, like when my dad passed away, it was like probably about 6-7 months later, because of his life review he had to do and everything situated over there. All of a sudden, I was watching wrestling and CM Punk came on, and he was, it was in Chicago, and all of a sudden I had all the lights off, just the TV, and my light came on out of nowhere. Yeah. And just that little bit when CM Punk came out in the middle of Chicago, I knew it was my dad, because we're from Chicago. And we have to start looking for that stuff, because I think what we do is we get tainted, like you said, from TV shows. Like you see a lot of things on Travel Channel where, they're throwing books when you don't ever see the camera, and they're doing all these crazy stuff. And I think we think that that's supposed to happen.
Yeah, the energy it takes to work with the physical environment here in our third dimension does take a tremendous amount of energy. And sometimes not even one spirit. Sometimes spirit on the other sides, plural, takes several spirits. Kind of like when it comes to mediumship seances and you're trying to gather the energy. Sometimes it takes a couple mediums to gather together in a circle to get the energy going, to be able to manifest that energy.
Yeah. I think we underestimate energy. I think we just hear the word energy and we think it's, and we're learning that there's no such thing as positive energy and negative, as good and bad. It's polarity. And as we understand that, we can use that more, because we can understand duality. We can understand how to change our perspective on ideas and everything. And I think that's what really does it, because when you're learning how in the metaphysical world and you're starting to expand, you got to realize that as we're learning, even in quantum physics and everything, that everything is, frequency, vibration, energy, and all this stuff, that I think that we have to expand our consciousness in order to reach that understanding, because if it's at a higher vibration and we're over here, it's impossible for us to make that leap.
Yeah. And I try to bring it to a layman's terms for people who are familiar with the pH scale. When it comes to acidity or alkalinity, or even the light spectrum, when it comes to the visible light spectrum. You've got, ultraviolet, and then to the unseen of ultraviolet into violet and the blue and the green and the yellow and the orange and the red, and then, infrared to the unseen. Well, when you look at that visual scale, you got to look at the spirit realm kind of like that. There's many different vibrations and frequencies that are resonating, and those are the different basically energies that are kind of trying to move in through our space-time or within this third dimension to try to connect with us. And that can be, like you said, polarity. It's not the evil or it's not the good. They're just the different polarities and wavelengths.
Absolutely. I always tell people one of the closest things that we can work with. I know we're talking about the 5D and the fifth dimension all the time and trying to go there. Well, fifth dimension is all about reflection of self and seeing yourself in every action and understanding yourself. It's not this like Garden of Eden as everyone thinks it's going to be. But I tell people one of the easiest, even though it's one of the easiest connections that we have to the metaphysical world is the sixth dimension, because the sixth dimension allows us creativity here. For us to create and manifest things, we have to be able to work with that sixth dimension. And so I think this is something good for the listeners to understand, is that if we're getting into the metaphysical realm, and that to start understanding the creativity and the creativity power through the sixth dimension to manifest it here. To me, I don't really get into the fifth dimension too much because I feel that other dimensions have more value in the third dimension right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a part of us, and the thing is, a lot of people are thinking that we are too far away from the fifth and the sixth dimension. Yeah. We are partially living, I wouldn't say living in, we are partially experiencing the other dimensions. We just don't realize it because we are multi-dimensional beings. Whether you're in a dream state, a high or a different, a meditative state, altered states of consciousness and deep meditation, or you're on some sort of a psychotropic drug or medicine, such as, I'm going to use the sacred medicines out there, kind of like ayahuasca, and peyote or something like ayahuasca especially. But those altered states of consciousness allows us to move into these states of consciousness that kind of get us and experiencing in those dimensional.
Yeah. And, I'm for that stuff to a point because, yes, sometimes we need to be shown that we're capable of that stuff. But what I see in a lot of the spiritual community is we rely on that. All of a sudden we think that only without me doing ayahuasca, I can never connect to that. Mm-hmm. And in my personal belief, and this is just my belief, I feel that those are there to show us maybe and help us get past some things to get us to a point. And then we're supposed to kind of take the training wheels off and kind of ride our own bike.
Yeah. It's we can't depend on these types of medicines, these sacred medicines, as a crutch. Absolutely not. And with my first and last experience with ayahuasca, I would have to say, wow, it has definitely opened up a doorway. It's changed my life. I mean, there's a lot of things I literally gave up that were habits in my life. And most of them were bad habits. Actually, all of them were bad habits.
Yeah. And
it allowed me to experience my true self and see it. But then at the same time going, hey, no, this is just opening up the door, let you experience it, and Mother Ayahuasca will teach you as long as you can open your eyes and trust me and submit to it. And then, and then it just, and I definitely don't suggest. I've seen people or heard of people that take it once a year or every. I'm like, no. I would not want to do anything like that.
You don't want to go for that ride once a year.
Not for a while.
Absolutely. But I think that's very important. I want to get into everybody. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with Dr. Paul after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back, and if you're just joining us, we have the fabulous Dr. Paul. And Dr. Paul, right before we went to the break, we were talking about ayahuasca and these type of spiritual practices that help us open up doors and show us who we really are. And one of the things that I think that we have to understand in the metaphysical world, and the last thing you said was we have to submit. Our ego always wants to fight, or always wants to try to look for the next answer, or always wants to try to control. But in these practices, and even outside of these spiritual practices, we really have to submit if we want to expand our consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to walk away from ourselves. This is something that's even taught in mediumship. If you want to get into professional mediumship and learn it, that is one of the lessons that you got to learn is step away from the ego, step away from the mind, this compulsive thought-generating machine here, because it can deceive you. It can play tricks on you.
No, absolutely. One of the questions that I was thinking about, because as we're talking, a lot of people do this for fun, and a lot of people do it as just something as a part of their lives. What made you decide that you should start doing this professionally?
When I think I was at the time, I was lost. I thought, okay, after my divorce, I thought, well, I thought it was kind of, I was denied. I was just thrown to the wayside. But then something came in. I think that this is definitely spirit telling me, especially my great grandmother, who's been in spirit for a long time. And it was like I felt my ancestors from the other side kind of step in, and it's like, be who you are. You are a spiritual person, and you need to teach. You need to teach, and you need to get into the paranormal. You need to, do what you love to do. And I've always had a passion, kind of trying to understand the paranormal and metaphysical. And even though I was watching all those shows, I wouldn't say ghost hunters, but unsolved mysteries. Only the ghost ones on unsolved mysteries were really good.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm like, yeah, and I've always wanted to be interested, especially all the cold cases, when they've never found the person. And I did do one of those once, quite a few years ago. And I was like, I need to do this. So got all the equipment, and at the time, it's like I'm trying, okay, am I going to do this all myself? Found a couple people to join the team. A couple people from the Spiritualist church that I was a member with, and a couple mediums come in and started a team. Some, camera guy, myself, case manager, and just do a couple cases, and then it ended up that I started getting a lot of client-based cases. A lot of clients reaching out to me. Hey, I'm experiencing this in the house. I just moved into this rental property. I'd like you to take a look at it. And the medium I had at the time that came in, I would use her as the to come in and do her own thing as I'm kind of doing my own. I'm trying to gather information. I'm interviewing the client. Trying to get all the and some of this information I would gather before I would even show up at the property. And for those who are familiar with that television show, was it The Dead Files with Steve DeShavi and Amy Allen? It's similar to that, and this is long before that program was even on the air. So as soon as I started seeing that show hit the networks, I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, I did that. So, and being able to help people, being able to help families, and seeing what happened to those families and how I changed their lives. Literally, there was one of my cases, one of the first cases as a team. I went in, and this family was about to be torn apart. The wife was about ready to leave her husband after 15, 20 years, take the kids, and just leave. I mean, a destroyed, torn apart family.
Wow.
And we went in, we investigated. Erin at the time, she's been on my show, and she goes in, and immediately the grandmother comes in, who had passed away. I think it was like 2 or 3 months earlier, and starts reaching out to Erin, our medium, and she's getting all the information, and I'm going to each room, not with the gizmos and gadgets, basically with a pendulum, and trying to pick up the energy and feeling the energy and seeing where the hot spots were. And then capturing some audio and capturing some baseline readings with an EMF meter. And so, make a long story short, at the end, it was the grandmother. The grandmother was trying to reach out to the family with love. She hadn't I wouldn't say she passed over, but a lot of her essence was still here. A lot of it was because there was a newborn. There was their daughter had just been born, and the grandmother had passed away just before the birth of the child, the birth of her grandchild, and she wanted to stay around to see the birth. And she was trying to reach out to the family. And what happened was all this activity, because of a lot of her essence was still there, it didn't take so much energy to get through the veil, to get and work within this third dimension. And what the family was receiving, or not receiving, but perceiving, was this energy, the cold spots, the shadows, the electronic equipment going on and off, and even some moving objects. Now, those moving objects ended up actually are part of us. It's fear. Yeah. It created so much fear in this family that it started to cause what's called psychokinetic activity or reoccurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. Basically, we create that energy and moving objects and what they call basically poltergeistic activity or poltergeist. After the investigation, we then went from investigation to consulting and comforting and counseling. And then the phenomenon stopped. The energy stopped. It calmed down. We guided them into neutralizing the energy in the house, blessing the house. And the family stayed together. Everything calmed down. They moved later only because they were in the bad part of town. So, but
it's amazing. I think what just again my opinion. I think what a lot of investigators and people working in metaphysical, we need to educate people more, because we think that everything in the shadows, like even out at night, people are afraid to go in dark rooms because they think there's something lurking there and gonna jump out of the corner and get you. And it plays a psychological mind, and that stress starts to affect the way you're living, the way you react to things, the way you perceive things. It affects whether or not you want to love the person next to you, because if I'm under stress and thinking that there's something in my house that's going to get me and try to kill me or whatever, or just try to cause all sorts of chaos, that especially then the movies playing in their head. I mean, that kind of thing. And so I like what you said, it started out investigating, then it went to consulting, then it went to comforting, because you have to educate people and say, hey, look, it's not what you thought it was. What it really was this. And, and just because hopefully that'll change their perception. Do you find in your profession that after you educate families and people that they kind of look at things differently?
Yeah. They look at things in a very different point of view when they realize that it's not a demon.
Yeah.
And quite a few of them, the first person in the house is, the charlatan psychic or something that's there for the money, not for the counseling. And they label it, you have a demon in your house. And it could, and sometimes it's a person that never even sets foot in that house. And they spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to get it excommunicated, so to speak. And it doesn't work
Yeah,
You
yeah.
got to be there in person.
Well, not only that though, but you know, use your own instincts, because we all have these intuitive sides to us. And and like you said, there are many, you know, people out there that are willing to be honest and open, but there are a lot of people out there that are looking for the buck and looking to put fear into you, and know that if they put fear into you, they can make a lot of money off you. I remember when I was working as a professional psychic medium at a store one time, a lady came in and was so distraught, and she was like, you know what, I can't get this demon outside my house. Da, da, da. I've spent all this money on this psychic, and she told me she was going to do this, and nothing. And I was like, whoa. And she ended up spending $50,000 to this lady.
Whoa.
And I just felt so bad with her. I didn't even charge her. I was like, you know what, let me go. I'll come to your house, see what I can do, see what it's about. I won't even charge you, because if you gave up that much money, you know, to get a problem fixed, and it's like, you know, and there's people out there, and I think that's what kind of gives that the bad rap. You know, you got, you know, and again, I don't bash on religion or anything. Hey, to each his own and stuff, but there are ideals and people out there that say, hey, well, this is, you know, the devil's work, and there's just so much more to life that we have to start expanding ourselves to. And it's, you know, it's hard for, like you said, be who you are. You know, if this is something you feel you need to do, because our life will be stripped away if we're not going in the path we need to, and it will be pushed there no matter how uncomfortable. And I think that's all part of the process. Yeah. So, you know, with you being into this now, you're professional, you're getting into this, you know, how has this kind of changed who you are as a person?
It gives me a sense of gratification and a sense of purpose. And like anybody, if anybody is in a field of service, and it doesn't matter what type of service. I mean, if it's housekeeping or anything, it's almost like you're doing God's work. You're doing a spiritual work. You're helping people, and if you truly help people, and ultimately, I think that's what we all should be doing. If we were in service of others, yes, we have to concentrate on ourselves. You know, we got to sleep, we got to eat, we got to do this. But if we dedicate a part of our time, whether it's per day, per week, per month, in service of others, that is what fulfills not our ego, but our heart. And you'll start to see that people will start paying that forward. And by doing that, it becomes contagious. And I feel that this field, not necessarily the field, but the way I do it can be contagious when it is doing it in the service of others. And a lot of these investigations I don't charge for.
Oh wow.
It's basically for a donation. You know, if you want to donate, great, but I don't.
Well, it costs money and stuff. I mean, if you're doing me a free service, and I understand this is your time, this is your equipment and everything, I think a donation is good for that. But what I like what you said, and you said it perfectly. It fulfills our heart to be in service of others. And it does. You know, we do things for the homeless all the time. We're constantly going out trying to show people that, you know, you don't have to have money to do these things. You don't have to have big business or a famous name, and if you're doing it really selflessly, not to make sure that you feel good, not to say, hey, look what I did today, and, you know, record it on everything and show everybody so you get 1 million likes and you're making money off of it. Because there are people out there, and hey, I'm not judging you. If that's what you feel you need to do, that's fine. But in my experience, it's when you're doing it selflessly, it shows people that, and it shows people that people care, that this world is not all terrible, that we can change. And also it shows that, you know, we are a collective consciousness. And in metaphysics and the spiritual aspects, we always talk about everybody being one, right? But how many of us truly understand that? If you're teaching someone and you're helping someone and you understand that we're all one, then you're helping yourself grow. And so, because, you know, if that person is another perspective of you just living out a different idea, you know, then not helping that would stop your own growth.
And it's definitely about evolving spiritually, and it is evolution. You know, we are always moving forward. Nothing is ever static. We are here for a reason. We are here on this earth for a reason, and I also feel that some of the work that I do is to help people understand that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a reawakening, going, oh, wow, now I understand.
Yeah.
Help people pay attention and find out what's going on.
Yeah, and that education, especially now that we're going through a jump right now, I think that education, because even people who don't understand that are feeling it. They're like, wait, something's going on here, and they're getting shifting. I mean, I don't know how many people who have not even interested in anything I do have come to me through Facebook and say, you know what, something's going on with me, and I don't know what it is, and even if they're not going to understand it because everyone is at a specific level of consciousness. That's okay, because we can still work with everyone in some form of way. And I think that's important, because working together, regardless if we have the same belief systems or the same ideals, I think promotes that idea that, hey, we don't have to be the same.
Yeah. I tell people too, it's like we've got to come to this idea or this knowing that we are not all the same. Yeah. And we've got to understand we've always been a diverse society, global diverse society. And we've got to understand that. We've got to come to that realization and love it, embrace it, regardless.
Yes. I always put that idea in perspective of food, because I like food. And so I always say, well, if everybody was a pizza maker, what other food would you eat? Right?
Right.
So you have to have people that make hot dogs and health food and all sorts of different things, because you'd be eating the same thing all the time. And how boring would that be? As much as I love pizza, well, I can't have it anymore, but, but that's the idea of it. And I think that the understanding, and that's one of the reasons, because you're the first person that I've had on this show that we're talking about the paranormal and the metaphysical in that extent, because I think it's a great idea for people to understand and expand their consciousness in that. But I do notice that we're almost out of time, so we're going to take a break now. And everybody, we will be back with Dr. Paul after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back, and I've been just having a fabulous time with Dr. Paul. When we were on break and just even thinking about through the show, a lot of people, when they hear paranormal and we're talking about, and they think ghost hunting, and they think they have all these stigmas, as we were talking about in the beginning. In Key West, we went to the Robert the Doll exhibit, and it's part of this old Civil War thing, and they have the actual doll there that's supposed to be haunted, and they give you the EMF detectors and I don't even know half the equipment, the thermals and everything. And a lot of people go out and they think it's just, maybe a hokey, something to do or just something fun. But there's a lot of seriousness to this. And I think that, when I went out there, I could feel all this energy, and it was just so great because it just had all this old history to it. You've had a lot of great experiences going to places and that. And being a professional, can you tell us a little bit what that's more like, rather like being a professional and doing that?
The thing is, a lot of people expect that they're going to pick up something right away. Go into the space and you're going to pick something up. Oh, my detector! I got a bunch of lights and this and that, and it's getting cold. And that doesn't always happen. Most of the time, it doesn't. You can spend hours and hours and hours just sitting there, just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And truth of the matter is, another thing too is there's always going to be an energy somewhere where you go, especially if, for instance, St. Augustine. Yeah. The thing is, especially a tourist attraction or a place where it's been labeled, active, it's going to be active. There's a lot of people's energy. Basically, what's happening too is every guest or every tourist that goes there is actually leaving evidence behind. You're leaving a part of your energy behind. It may not last very long. It could be anywhere from a few days to up to a month.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's a few days. And depending on the energy too, as far as the historical energy, that is always there's a part of it that's always going to be latent in that surrounding. Another thing too is we also imprint our thoughts when we go there. As soon as we walk into a place and we think that it's haunted, we then start feeling that it's haunted, and then start imprinting and blueprinting that place with the energy. And that's where the PK comes from, the psychokinetic energy comes from. Whether you're truly going to experience something or not, all depends on how much energy you're going to place into it. Now, it's not to discount spirit. There's always spirit there. There's always. In the metaphysics aspect of the paranormal, is I've learned through the academic aspect and the scientific aspect is there would never be any paranormal activity at all that would even exist if it wasn't for the human agent.
Yes.
Because of the human agent, there is paranormal activity. Because we are spirit.
Yes.
And then when we bring in the other etheric spirits, the other energies and stuff like that, or even call them in, which we do, now we have heightened phenomena. So, some places are more haunted than others.
Yeah.
Some people are also wanting to know, what are there different types of hauntings?
Yes.
Yeah, there's different types of hauntings. Like I said, there's
well, I think the word haunting, it kind of like amplifies it, because is it really a haunting? I mean, if we're all interdimensional and all the dimensions are and you're constantly walking through them, that idea, I mean, then the whole world is haunted because because that idea. But, with your what you were saying about how we leave our energy there, I call them energy dumps, because people go there and they think, ooh, this is haunted. This is the most haunted hotel. And then they are so full of energy that they dump it there. And then that nervous energy, that excitable energy could trigger somebody else. And they're saying, ooh, I feel off. I feel something's going on because now it's affecting mine. And like you said, there's so many people going there. I mean, it's like a smorgasbord of energy just there. I mean,
the petri dish of psychic energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that people need to also understand is just because something is old, it doesn't mean it's haunted. We tend to think, oh, well, this house is built in the 1800s and this house is a plantation or whatever, so it's haunted. Oh, someone died here, it's haunted. No, not. I mean, my house is from 2004 and I opened up a couple portals. There's people coming in all day long and people see them all the time. Would you call that haunting? No, it's just they're here, And I think that that's what is great about what you do as a profession is you can educate those people and tell them and say, hey, you know what? Yes, well, these are so many reasons why we could be feeling off or feeling like something's going on when it may or may not be happening.
Yeah, and we can also trigger events, not only personally, but like as a group or a collective. I've had stories and families talk about, they'll have a party or something and some friends over and they'll have a particular party playing some specific music, and the energy that we're creating in that room will then trigger an event, which will, then they'll see like an apparition, or the lights go dim and stuff like that. And it's kind of like what we do here in this realm can also be a trigger to cause something.
Yeah, and I think that's what our minds do to ourselves, because our minds are very powerful, and we can, like you said, we can trigger events, we can trigger things that are happening. I know that, like, I've gone a few investigations, nothing like you, just for fun, just out, with a lot of people that don't. And sadly, there's places that take advantage of that. Like, I won't mention the place, but there's one place that had someone on a spirit box, and everyone had spirit boxes, and they were going off all the time and saying our names and saying, and I just looked at this and I was like, come on, like, all right, I'm not going to say anything. I know it's fake. I know it's from, but I'll just go with it. And everybody was so, oh my God, they just said my name. Like, and I think that, our minds sometimes could be our friends, or they could be our worst enemies in this type. So I think maybe with an open mind and a little bit of healthy skepticism to keep ourselves in check, just to kind of say, well, all right, let's take this as is. Like, if I'm walking into a building, or if I'm living at my house, because we've seen people that thought that houses were, as you say, haunted, but it was really like, faulty wiring that was causing EMFs to kind of act, and that kind of stuff happens, right?
Yeah. It's we also got to look at structure. Check out the structure. How old is the place? What's the history of the building? Has there been any renovations in it? Since it was of its history. And like you said too, is our minds are faulty. Our senses are faulty when it comes to our senses do deceive us. And that is one of the very important factors that we got to look at and pay close attention to when it comes to investigating this type of stuff. Is there's a phenomenon called pareidolia, and pareidolia is it happens most often during for seeing, our sense of sight, and our sense of hearing. And basically what that is our mind trying to unscramble something that is scrambled information, and trying to piece it together to make something that's recognizable to the mind or to our consciousness. And a good example of that is, you're looking up at the clouds and you start seeing animals. But what's most common about that in investigation is looking at a picture and automatically seeing a face. But yet you show it to somebody else and they don't see nothing. Or audio. If you're listening to something over and over and over and over and over again, your mind will play tricks on you, and you'll start hearing things that aren't there.
Correct.
And especially if someone imprints something to you, like, oh, I heard the word hello. Yeah. But when you listen to it, you're going to hear hello because somebody already imprinted it to you. But if you give it to somebody else, I never heard that.
When I was working as a professional, I used to sit there and say, I don't want to hear your name. Don't tell me your birthday. Don't tell me any information, because the moment you subject me to information, my mind's going to start saying, well, you're a Sagittarius, or you're a Capricorn, so you're this, and then I'm not, and then my information is not doing. Even still today, when I work with clients on a different way, I ask them specific questions, not to tell me stuff, but to get an idea. And I think that when we're subjected to that, because we all want to have these great experiences, because we're all kind of looking to make us feel special, to make our lives exciting, especially if, we're not happy in life. And sometimes we go to these things. And I like that, because isn't there a thing of art? I'm not familiar with art, but once in a while I run where people just constantly paint over something and move things differently. And you see all these different shapes and faces and different things, and as they're doing it. And that just is, like you said, with the clouds, it's kind of like a good idea to remember not to get too ahead of ourselves in this, to kind of take it like, at face value, and kind of take it and say, okay, let's open our minds a little bit and not run away with this, because then it's not real sometimes.
And being in and trying to work in this field as a scientist, or as a reputable scientist, you have to put these controls in place, and have these control groups, and separate these control groups to gather specific data and have corroborating evidence. You have to have more groups of and gathering of different corroborating evidence and then put it together. You can't just, do one investigation and have just one group gathering information all together and expect something from it. You have to, it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, and takes a lot of energy and different controls to be set in place in order to be not considered pseudoscience.
Yeah. And I think that's very wise information you just gave out, because that's one of the reasons why I liked connecting with you, because, in our field, sometimes you get the people that are just so excited and everything's a miracle, the leaf blowing around, and all of a sudden, that's a message from something. And it's like, okay. And I'm one of those, slow down a little bit. All right. Let's get into this, and that is because, I know we got a few minutes left, but what message do you have? Like, if someone wants to get into your field, because you don't hear a lot of doctors that are in the metaphysical world, but it's a field that actually needs expanding. So what message or what kind of information would you give to somebody that's like hears you and say, wow, that's something I'd really like to be a part of?
Look around your local area. There might be if you want to get into the mediumship aspect, look for a local spiritualist church that teaches spiritual mediumship or spiritualist mediumship. If you're looking into also, and definitely get into mediumship if you wanted to get into paranormal, because it'll save you money, because now you don't have to buy all the toys. They're fun, but
yeah, but they're just a crutch, right?
Yeah, you'll start to realize you don't need those toys, especially as a medium.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to get into the scientific aspect and learn the decorum, learn the do's and don'ts, learn the science, learn about yourself, because you need to learn about the self. You need to learn about the biomechanics of the human mind, the body, how this works. This is the tool to learn how to connect.
Yeah.
And by doing that, there's a school here in the state of Florida called the Institute of Metaphysical Humanistic Science. I believe they are still out on the Gulf Coast. They do a lot of their stuff online. It's all online based. They do a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate program. And it can take anywhere, if you want to do the doctorate, it can take up to 4 to 8 years, 8 years at the most. But it's well worth it. You will learn a lot. And yeah, I think, it's
all right.
that would be the best. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And a lot of people don't realize that those resources. So even, I'm glad it's online, but even check your state too as well.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Paul, thank you so much for being on the show. Before we go, do you have any like websites or any contact info that you'd like to give out to them?
Yeah, they can reach me at ConsciousRadioNetwork at gmail.com. My website is still in progress, but you can go to the YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and go Conscious Radio Network, and if you see this logo, you found the website. So, and all our stuff, podcast and stations and information is directly off of that on the About page too.
Absolutely. And Dr. Paul, your podcast is wonderful. I've listened to a bunch of shows, and people, it's definitely worth checking out. So if you haven't done it, go to YouTube and Conscious Radio Network. Dr. Paul, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been my honor to have you. I had such a wonderful time.
Same here. Thank you, Raina. It's been a pleasure and a blessing and honor.
You're welcome. All right, everybody, that's tonight's show. If you would like to follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/Transcendental Transformation, visit us on our website at soulandspiritguide.com. Sign up for our newsletter to give VIP access to the site and special hidden guest offers. If you have any questions about tonight's show, email me at transcendentaltransformations, that's plural, @gmail.com. And always remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.